Could artificial intelligence augment our democracy? I'm Tonya Hall for ZDNet and Tech Republic, and joining me is Dr. Cesar Hidalgo, director of MIT's Collective Learning Group. Welcome, Dr. Hidalgo.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks.
Give us a brief summary of your resume, especially regarding your work in artificial intelligence.
So for many years, I've been working on creating tools to integrate, distribute, and visualize large volumes of data, especially in the public sector. So I created the Observatory of Economic Complexity, which is the main tool to distribute international trade data in the world. I created Data USA, which has grown to be the #1 tool to visualize US public data. I created similar projects for Africa, for Chile, for Saudi Arabia, and as I've been doing that, I've also started to use this data to start making predictions and to do AI work. And in that world and in those projects, I started to come to the idea that maybe AI has different places and roles to play in our governments.
In fact, you're a proponent of a concept called augmented democracy. Explain the concept, where it came from, and what problem it intends to solve.
So the idea of augmented democracy is quite a provocative idea. This is the idea of having democracy implemented at a direct level, not by having representatives that represent you and many other people at the same time, but by having representatives that are completely personalized, having one senator per person, and doing that by using, instead of a human, a digital twin created by AI to be that representative. So it's the idea of augmenting democracy by having as many senators or congressmen as you have citizens.
So, for the way I understand it, it seems that the two main points of this concept involve direct democracy and digital twins, or avatars, if you will. What are those two core concepts? Why are those two core concepts so important?
So direct democracy is the idea that people could represent themselves directly. They wouldn't require an intermediation. Whether that is good or bad, that's something that is up for debate, of course, and I can talk about that too. Now, the other concept is the idea of a digital twin. This is the idea of having an entity that is able to duplicate you and make choices for you. So you can think that we have some sort of very primitive digital twins already online. When you go to Pandora to listen to music, there is someone there that is a digital twin or representation of you that is choosing that music for you. In Amazon, the recommendation system, you can also think of it as a very primitive digital twin. In the future, we're going to have digital twins shopping for you, and they're going to be sending you things home, and you're going to send things back, the things that you don't want, because you're going to start having more and more of those assistants representing you in the places where you don't have time to make decisions. Maybe one day, this idea of digital twins will grow enough that it might become part of the way in which we represent ourselves in democratic participation.
So one of the lessons of history is that pure democracies always end up being three wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. So can and should augmented democracy be implemented in such a way to prevent tyranny of the majority?
Of course, and one of the things that I say in my TED Talk and I explain in the FAQ is that in reality, this is not an idea of let's overthrow the government and replace it by voting avatars or digital twins. The idea here is can we explore the design space of democracy by using this digital twin technology and start to do it in a relatively grassroots, non-binding type of systems, So for instance, now there's people in university settings that have started to play with these ideas and to create systems that would make predictions of how people would vote, or would design user interfaces on how to do it without making this binding. Because what we want to do here is to learn. And what is funny about this idea, after all, is that even though it sounds very radical and provocative, it is not if you consider that one possible solution of a digital twin system is to have that digital twin vote exactly like the senator or congressman that now represents you. And at that moment, you create an augmented democracy that is identical to the democracy that we have today. The only difference is that now we have a tunable parameter that we can use to deviate from that as little or as much as we want. And that's the provocation. It's not a complete overhaul, but it's to realize that with new technology, we have a new knob that we can move.
Explain the process of creating my augmented democracy avatar.
So the idea of having like some avatar or digital twin is actually quite common, and it's been advocated also by people that work on the field of AI ethics, saying that one way to maybe have an effective AI ethics is even to have, a digital twin or an avatar that would learn to behave or to feel in a similar way that we do, as a way to represent us. Now, how would you build that? Of course, there are many possible ways in which you can think that you can try to do that. And in those ways, you want to separate between different things. On the one hand is, what data are you going to be feeding that avatar to train, and on the other hand is, where are you going to be getting the algorithms that are grabbing that data, and making the predictions? And the third layer, would also be, what is the marketplace for these algorithms, and how do we keep the system distributed such as not to monopolize power? So when it comes to data, we can think of, well, there is data that we already provide in many public forms online, so if you look at me on the web, you can see my list of publications, you can see my YouTube videos. I can consider all that public information that I've disclosed and that could be available to train some sort of virtual version of Cesar. You could also have sorts of data that are semi-private. So my Facebook post, I'm sharing with a big group of people, in my case, that are public actually, but you can think that that data is not absolutely private like your email, because it's still being shared, but it's kind of like somewhere in between. Then you have private data. This is data that you express in acts of communication. You could put that data and you can see how much of that data you want to put. You can also have explicit surveys. You can have people take personality surveys. You can have people take surveys about like their political and moral views, and incorporate that into the mechanism. You could even ask people to give their opinion on certain policies, that might exist, and you want to know how people would vote on them, as a way to like now start training and figuring out, how you would vote on the next policy using that information. So the sources of data are diverse. What data we get there, it's also something that would need to be decided in the context of the system. Then in the case of the algorithms, there's also many ways in which you can map, some word embeddings or different types of, non-structured data into a prediction. My proposal is not to centralize any of this, but to have kind of like a marketplace in which you and I can grab our data, have it in our own personal private pod, can grab an algorithm from a marketplace, use that algorithm, and if we don't like it, we ditch that algorithm and bring another one, but our data never gets transferred or becomes part of a market. It's on the contrary, the data remains private, and there's a little market of algorithms that people can subscribe to or unsubscribe that are being used to make the predictions and that are being audited. And in that way, we keep the system flexible, and at the same time, we help avoid some of the problem of centralizing this in a unique algorithm, which is the last thing that we would want.
So will my avatar vote at every opportunity, or only in those areas where I have a minimum demonstrated knowledge of the issue?
So that would depend on how you want to implement the system. As I said before, this is a completely tunable thing. So you could have an avatar that just follows your congressman. You can have an avatar that the only thing that it does is ask you what you would do, and you can have an avatar in between that sometimes makes some decisions in a more autonomous manner. You can also think that you could even allocate, how much attention you want to give to certain issues. Maybe you care a lot about the environment, but maybe you don't care about other issues, so therefore you want, to focus more on that, and to have your avatar ask you for more input in those dimensions that you care about more. I think the concept is wide enough that those narrow questions, are of course up to be defined. And that's where I think the green field of discovery is, because there's a lot to explore.
And our opinions change, right? So can I modify my avatar's data set to reflect learning, growth, and changes to my opinions and preferences?
Of course, and I think that is something that is extremely important, and it's a little bit neglected in modern politics. Like we live in a world in which if you said something in 1995 and now you think differently, for some reason it's considered a contradiction, and people change. I think we have the right to be mistaken, to make mistakes. We all have the right to make mistakes. It's not that it's because we're mean or anything. It's like we are, imperfect, and we're going to make mistakes. We have the right to change our minds if we think things differently, and those things need to be reflected. So the idea is that you can always go back and then correct, some piece of information that you've given, and then observe how that rolls over into new changes. Because I think people learn throughout life, and you want people to be able to give back that information, to the system as they learn, as they change their mind, as they get new information and a new view of the world.
So far we've discussed augmented democracy in terms of government. In what other use cases might this technology be applied?
So if you go outside of the public sector, one place in which actually I found there's quite a bit of interest is in consumer service. So if you think about it, there's a lot of people trying to get people to answer service. And the truth is, a lot of people don't want to answer service. So we have like this big, on the one hand, like robocall industry of, robots trying to get people to answer service or so forth. We have also, like very bad polling systems right now that have a lot of errors. But what if, those surveys could be answered by your digital twin? You don't have time for a survey, but maybe your digital twin has time, and maybe your digital twin even can get compensated for participating in a survey. Maybe you can provide some guidance on which type of service they can participate or not. But the way that I see this is that we're moving into a world in which with AI, having an assistant is going to be very cheap, but the assistants are not going to be very good. So we're going to give them jobs that we don't care that much about. In the beginning, they might be very simple, easy decisions. Over time, if they get better, they might go into decisions that are competing for our attention.
Tell us about the contest you've opened for design proposals.
So one of the things that I did when I released the talk a few weeks ago was that I wanted people to participate, but at the same time, I think that the idea is still too new to think of an actual implementation. Even though there's some ideas on how that may happen, that's a really challenging task. Legalese is a very complex language in which laws are written, to using NLP to make predictions to be accurate. So what I'm interested now is to invite people to participate on a more UI, UX design exercise. If the government and democracy would have a user interface that you could log into, and you could communicate how you feel about, abortion or gun laws or trade or any issue, how should that user interface look like? If those preferences then could be used to make predictions, about certain policy issues, how would that user interface would look like? How would it ask you back for feedback? There's many different design options that you can think about. And what I'm doing now is I'm offering thousands of dollars of prizes for teams and individuals to create designs, submit them, and the best designs are going to be awarded, cash prizes for helping us think about how the future of the user interface of democracy should be like.
Dr. Cesar Hidalgo, director of MIT's Collective Learning Group. If somebody wants to connect with you, they want to find out more about your work, how can they do that?
So I would say two things. If they want to learn about the augmented democracy work, the URL is peopledemocracy.com. There you have information about the prize. There's a long FAQ. If you want to contact me, just my personal website probably is the best. You just Google Cesar Hidalgo, is going to show up, and there you have my contact information, papers, and past work.
Thanks again. And if you guys want to find more of my interviews, you can do that right here on ZDNet or Tech Republic, or go to my website, tonyahall.net. Thanks for watching.